A reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verses 12 through 23. Now when Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum by the sea, in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali, so that what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, on the road by the sea across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. From that time Jesus began to proclaim, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went through Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness among the people.
I want to talk to you today about our gospel story, about the call of Andrew, Peter, James, and John. But I want to start by telling you a personal story. I was 17. This was 1975. Between my junior and my senior year in the summer of 1975, and I was 17. I had turned 17 in June, just before we got out of school, just before we were let out. And I had a girlfriend who lived across town. She lived about 20 miles from where I lived, and I had a 5-speed Stingray bike, a little fast bike. And so I would go to her house on the weekends and visit with her. And this one weekend, it was a Saturday, and I took off in the morning, and I headed across town. This is mid-August in Southern California. And so it was a hot day, I'll admit it. It was a hot day. And I was about halfway there, about 10 miles into my ride to get to my girlfriend's house. And I was in downtown Riverside by this time, in a place called the Plaza Mall. And it was kind of an open-air mall, a big plaza area. And in the middle of this plaza, in this building, was a recruiter's station. And as I'm riding my bike along, and I'm going through this area, here was this big poster board thing standing out there, with Uncle Sam standing on it, in the poster saying, "Uncle Sam wants you." And I saw that, and I'll be honest with you, between my junior year and my senior year was one of those transition points for me in my life. I had been working on a horse ranch. I had done all kinds of different things that I had done. I was really but at that moment, I was looking for something to do, something to be, other than what I had in my future, which really wasn't a very promising future. My mom was a single mom. She couldn't afford to send me to college. I wasn't working very much. I was working on a horse ranch at $1 an hour, and so that's chicken feed. I didn't, there was just no way I was going to go to college. And so I was looking, what am I going to do with my life? And I'm in that before my senior year. And so here I am, and I'm going along, and I see this recruiting station. So I pull my bike over and park it, and I step into the recruiting office. And there are 4 doors in this recruiting office. There's a hallway and 4 doors. And I look to my left, and I look in there, and there's this guy in a blue suit. It's got stripes on its sleeve, but it looks like a blue suit to me. He's got a tie on, and it's a khaki shirt, but it's just a blue suit. The Air Force was not for me. I looked at that and I said, no, I can't wear that uniform and feel like I'm actually doing something. And so no. So I looked to the right, and as I looked to the right, in this little right office, there's a guy, and he's got a pair of green, kind of a forest green pants on, and a shirt, with some stripes and a couple of ribbons. But his shirt isn't quite tucked in, and he's not quite straight. He just looks a little sloppy, to me, in my eyesight at that moment. And so, okay, Army is not for me. And I walked on down the hall, and I looked to the right this time again, and there's this guy in a white suit and a white uniform. And he's got some sort of regalia on his sleeve, and he's got a couple of ribbons and a couple of things. But he's also got a little bit of a gut that's hanging over his belt. Which, again, looking a little sloppy and not quite put together. Navy's not for me. I look in the last office, the one on the left, down at the end of the hallway, and here's this guy standing up against the wall. He's standing there like this. There's a desk here in front of him, and he's standing there just like this. And he's reading what's on his desk. And he's standing here just like this. And I look at him, and he's got a straight line from his neck all the way down. It's just a straight line. There's this gig line, is what they call it. Later I learned this. It's called the gig line. And this is a straight line. Everything is straight. And he is thin and muscular. He's just got this look about him, this warrior, this look of man, this guy could kill people. And I look at this guy and I says, that's it. That's it. And I felt that at that moment, I felt that call, saying, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. I have no future, but this is what I really, truly felt I needed to do with my life. So I went into the office, and we sat down, and we talked, and went through some things, went through some paper, and talked a little bit. Now, remember, I'm 17, so, and the draft is over, and so the military right now is looking for volunteers. They're looking for people to volunteer up, and so this Marine recruiter was pretty happy that I had walked in the door, because he wasn't getting a whole lot of recruits at this time. Remember, this is 1975. Vietnam War had just ended, and there was not a lot of love for the military at that time. I mean, I'll be honest with you, my first year in, I got things thrown at me, I got people spit on me and called me names and all kinds of stuff. So the military wasn't really, people weren't joining the military. So he was pretty happy when I walked in. So we filled out some paperwork, and he says, I'll need to talk to your mom and get your mom's permission. Okay, so we set an appointment up for the next Saturday, the following Saturday, he'd come to the house and we'd sit down with mom and talk about this. So I went on to my girlfriend's house, we spent the day, rode my bike back home. That evening when I got home, I mentioned it to my mom that I had stopped in at the Marine recruiter's office to talk about joining the Marines. Well, the look of fear and panic on my mother's face was indescribable. I could see it to this day, the fear and panic on her face. And she says, well, you'll have to finish high school. And okay, well, we'll talk about that. And so when the recruiter came over that following Saturday, we worked the deal out. I would sign up now, and I would go on what was called the delayed enlistment program. I would actually sign up into the Marines, but they were going to give me 9 months before I had to actually report to boot camp. So I would get my senior year done and graduate high school, and I'd be a high school graduate. Because they really were not hiring people who didn't, the military was not looking for people who were not educated. They wanted, this is a volunteer service, now they're looking for educated people. So if I didn't go there with a high school diploma, I wasn't going to really get in. And so I had to finish my high school. And that really helped my mom say, okay. Very unhappily, she said okay, but she signed the documents. And so I joined the Marines at 17 and went through my senior year. Well, a few months had elapsed, September started, I went to school, and so forth. And as I started school, a couple of months had elapsed, because I had actually signed up, the final paperwork was in September of 1975, just before school. So I got into school, and a couple of weeks have elapsed, and then I get a phone call from the pastor of my church. Pastor Bennett calls me up. Now, just so you know, the young woman that I was dating, the young girl I was dating, was the pastor's daughter. The pastor calls me up. Pastor Bennett calls me and he says, Stephen, I have something I would like to do with you. Can I come by and pick you up, and I've got something I want to show you? Well, sure, Pastor. Okay, so Brother Bennett came over, I got into his Volkswagen Beetle, and we went off somewhere. We went to downtown Riverside, we stopped in front of this huge building, this big complex of some kind, and it was an architectural firm. Now when I was in high school, as I was going through high school, my first couple of years, I I took architectural drawing. First off, I took machine drawing, and then I took architectural drawing. And I got all the way up to into the advanced class. I took it for a couple of years and got all the way up to the advanced class in architectural drawing. I had sent samples in to the Orange County Fair and to other organizations that were, awarding awards and things like that. I entered a lot of competitions with my drawings and won several awards. And so Pastor Bennett had taken me down to this architectural firm, and I went in and I sat down with a small group of men who were in charge of this thing. They interviewed me, they looked through some of the papers, because Pastor Bennett somehow had gotten a hold of a lot of my architectural drawings and had shown them to them. And they had looked through the drawings, and they offered me an apprenticeship with a scholarship to the University of California, attached to that, to become an architect. Wow, okay, let me think about this. I go back home, and Mom hears about this, and she's excited that maybe this will work. Maybe this will pull me out of that and take me into this other job, this other direction in my life. Time elapsed, and again, I'm in the music department of high school. I'm in the elite singing group of the high school. I'm in the chamber singers. And Sandra Herbert is the name of my music director. And she hears, I mentioned it to her that I'm joining the Marines, and she also gets almost that exact same look that my mother had, this fear and panic on her face, that Stephen, who she really likes and likes the personality of, is going to go off and join the Marines and turn into some sort of a killer beast. And I assure her that I will not change. I will be the same person that I was, that I will be. And she said, I don't know. And she's really depressed about this. And a week or so elapsed, and I kind of forget I just kind of move on with my life, getting ready, getting prepared for September when I plan on going off and joining the Marines or going down to boot camp. A little more time, and the next thing I know, she comes to me again and she says, Stephen, I want to take you someplace, and I want you to go with me. Okay. So after school, we get in the car, and she takes me over to RCC, Riverside Community College. And she introduces me to the director of their music department. And we sit down, and he hands me a piece of music, and he says, I want you to sing. And so I look at the music. It's something I'm relatively familiar with, so I sing to him. And he says, thank you, and I leave, and we leave. And then a couple of days later, Sandra tells me that the music department at Riverside Community College would like me to join their music department when I graduate high school, and they're offering me a scholarship in music. So here I am now. I'm in high school. I'm 17, moving toward the Marine Corps, and I have two offers in front of me for other occupation, for other directions in my life. And both of them are really good options. Of course, we find out, later I find out that going to an architectural firm at that particular time over the next 4 or 5 years would have really been disastrous. Sometimes you see God working in your life in your rearview mirror. It would have been disastrous because it was a housing slump and it was a building slump and architects were out of work and so forth. So it had been a messed up period, but I was offered these two things, and I had to decide somewhere along the way which one was really calling to me the most. I graduate high school on June 14th of 1976. I turned 18 on June 27th, 1976. And on June 29th, 2 days later, I'm standing on the Yellow Footprints in San Diego. And an hour later, I'm not having any hair. And they changed me. So I tell you that story because I want to connect that into our story today from the gospel. Jesus has moved. Jesus was still living in Nazareth, but he had gone down south and he had gone down to Jerusalem. And while he was down in Jerusalem, he had got himself baptized by John the Baptist, and had started working around down in there a little bit. He was sent off into the desert. He spent 40 days in the desert, out in the wilderness with Satan, getting tempted and so forth, and then he comes back. And as he comes back, he hears that John the Baptist has been arrested. And so he leaves Judea, goes back to his hometown of Nazareth, and he packs up all of his stuff out of his home that he's living in Nazareth, and he moves to Capernaum. And he sets up a new house and a new place to live in Capernaum. Rents a home, buys a home, we don't know, but he moves and sets up his base of operation in Capernaum. Capernaum is along the Sea of Galilee. And so in his hometown now, is where he's living now, he runs across James and John, Andrew, and Peter, also known as Simon, or Simon, also known as Peter. And he sees them, and he gives them a call. Come, follow me, and I will teach you how to fish for people, how to bring people into wholeness, into life. And the story tells us they immediately got up and followed Jesus. Followed that call that he made to them. But I want you to remember here that he's moved, Jesus has moved, and his base of operation is now Capernaum. And this is where these fishermen live also. This is where Zebedee, the father of James and John, lives. This is where Peter and his widowed mother live. Can you imagine when Peter and Andrew and Peter, they get up and they follow Jesus and they go to wherever he's going on that first day. And he kind of briefs them, tells them, here's what we're going to do, here's what life is like, here's what we're going to do with our ministry as I move you forward into pulling you into this calling that I'm giving you. But I can imagine also that at night, in the evening, they go back home. Or they're not always off with Jesus when he's out doing his thing, and sometimes they're back at home, taking care of Mom, the widowed mother of Peter, or taking care of Dad, Zebedee, over here. And so they kept coming back home. Can you imagine maybe the pressure that they were getting from both their parents, their associates? Remember, Peter and Andrew, they owned their own boats. They had their own fleet of ships, of fishing boats, which means they had crew, people who worked and depended on them for their livelihood. And here Peter and Andrew get up and walk away. So I imagine sometime later that evening or over the next week or months as Jesus is still continuing his ministry in that region, that they continue to come back home and they get pressure. Because mother-in-law, the widowed mother doesn't want to lose the livelihood of their son and their boat and their fishing fleet and all of this for this strange life that they seem to want to go off and do, this strange calling to go off and follow this itinerant preacher out in the middle of nowhere. What kind of life is that? The mother must be thinking, what kind of life is that? When they have this, they have the boats, they have the fish, they have a livelihood right here. And you can imagine Father Zebedee, when James and John both said, Dad, we're leaving. We're going to go follow this itinerant preacher out into the middle of nowhere and just follow him around for the next 4 years. Can you imagine Zebedee, who has been training and teaching his sons how to take over his job, how to take over the family business of fishing? What kind of pressure Zebedee put on his sons, saying, but sons, I need you. I need you to learn this job. I need you to learn this profession so that you can take this when I die. I can imagine all of that happening and what kind of stress that they went through, what kind of outside influence was to try to pull them away from that calling. That was the same thing in a lot of ways that I received from my mother, from my pastor, from my teacher. Don't go off and do this crazy thing, but instead here is something more reasonable, more easy. But just like James, John, Andrew, Peter, you have to listen to the call. You have to take that call. You have to do what God asks you to do. I truly believe that call right there as I was standing in front of that recruiting office was truly from God. I really believe that. Looking back on it in my life, I really believe that God was calling me into the military. That may sound strange, but I truly believe that. Because that is what kept me alive. That's what moved me forward. That's what changed who I was into who I am. It gave me character. It gave me somebody to look up to. It gave me family. It gave me friends. And it gave me a life. That's what that calling did. I've had two callings in my life, and I'm in my second one now. The second calling took 17 years to take effect. To actually get into work, to actually work and make it happen. It took 17 years of me really just kind of not paying much attention and just kind of following wherever God led me until all of a sudden I'm here doing this. But it took 17 years of kind of gentle call by God to move me into what I am now. But that first call, boy, that was a big one. That's one that just slammed me in the back of the head and said, this is what you've got to do, and that's what I did. But I can imagine that their calling was difficult too. That they had outside influence saying, wait, there's a different way. Let me go this way, go this way, go this way, because it's easy. Each one of us, I truly think God calls us one way or another in our lives. Somewhere in our life, God has called you into something. Whether, like me, it was to ministry or to the military, but you, each, I know that God has touched you in some way, that has called you into something in your life that benefited the kingdom, that moved us forward. And I know as we go through life, that you also will later receive, as you move through life, that God will also call you again. God will stick his finger into your life and say, here, I want you to do something. Here, I need you to look at this. Here, I need you to feel this. We need to pay attention to those calls. Allow those calls into us. Listen and follow when God calls.